So Reverend Karen Linsley has been Centers of Spiritual Living Minister since 2014 and a practitioner since 2008. She was ordained in 2018. She currently serves as an interim minister for Centers for Spiritual Living, having done so since 2019, and also has a focus ministry called Fearlessly Feral Living. She produces a podcast called Fearlessly Feral Living, found wherever you listen to your podcast. She began designing her own workshops, classes, and retreats before the link on her practitioner's license was dry. This has been one of her specialties since her ministry began. She loves seeing people enter her workshops with confusion and lack and see them exit with clarity and abundance. She's a sought-after guester, having spoken at Unity at the Lake, Unity Sacramento, Centers for Spiritual Living in Bakersfield, Grass Valley, Auburn, Sacramento, Placerville, Reno, Lake Tahoe, and Las Vegas. Open Door CSL in Sylvia, North Carolina, and Lake Havasu. She lives in a small rural town in northern Nevada on a 2.5-acre ranchette with her 2 horses, 2 dogs, and 2 cats, 2 times 2 times 2. She loves to ride her horses, garden, cook, and attend potlucks. So let's welcome Karen Linsley this morning.
Well, hello, everybody. Hi. It's so nice to be here with all of you. And I really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you very much. Today, I'm going to talk about the Grand Rising. And the more that I got into this topic, the more enthusiastic about it I became. And I'm going to repeat that quote that you read a little earlier in the reading, Nancy, because I just love it. It is time for us to emerge into this new world, driven by faith, leading with courage, and moving with action. It is time for our grand rising. So as I move through my talk, I'd like to ask that you keep the qualities of faith, courage, and action active in your consciousness and see how you can apply them to the things that I'm going to say here. With those at the forefront, we are sure to achieve a grand rising. When I first heard the title, I looked up the meaning of grand rising, and it turns out it's popular in African American circles as a replacement for good morning. It means to greet each day with positivity and empowerment. Now I can really get behind that because I've never much cared for the standard good morning greeting. I don't know why. It's like fingernails on a blackboard for me. When somebody says good morning to me, I'm like, ew, no. Now, in my less enlightened days, when someone would say good morning to me, I'd say, what's good about it? And I'd growl at them. Today, it's not like that. Today, I smile back and I might wave and do a little namaste greeting, but I'm not ready to talk quite yet with a greeting like that. So I let people know about that. I tell them, early in the morning, just leave me alone for a little while, and then we can move on and start talking after a bit. But this grand rising, this greeting of positivity and empowerment, it's perfect for what we are experiencing now. I mean, look at you guys. I just found out this morning, next week's your last week in your building. You're moving, you're exchanging keys, you're packing things, you're doing all that stuff. What a beautiful opportunity for you guys. I'm very excited for you. I really am. This is the beginning of a grand rising for Center for Spiritual Living Tahoe-Truckee. But we can do this on personal levels too. And thinking about positivity and empowerment, I think that 2024 might be challenging in different ways than what we've experienced the last few years. And think about it. I mean, we still have COVID. We don't have mandated shelter in place anymore, but we still have COVID. We still have extreme weather. We still have politicians that lie and news media that refuses to set the record straight. We still have misinformation and conspiracy theories and some violence, a lot of violence. And I don't know about you guys, but I think most of us are kind of tired. We're just tired. I know I am. I'm tired of it all. But that's not really the challenge. The challenge here facing us right here and right now, if we are to affect a grand rising, the challenge is to show up for this, for all of it, and take care of ourselves so we get some rest, but show up for all of this and advocate for something new and different. And that's why I'm excited for you guys in this community, because you show up for the packing, you show up for the move, and now you're going to begin to advocate for something different in your community. The challenge here is to do that and to additionally take the positivity and the empowerment of this teaching called New Thought and take our own incredible powers of creativity and create, not discover, but create new ways of doing things, because that's what we're all about here in this teaching called Science of Mind. Yes, there's an element of discovery when we discover new things about ourselves, but when it comes to living life, we create. We create. That's where our power lies. And we need to figure out what our desires are. We illuminate them with clarity, and then we use spiritual practices to be inspired and to carry that faith and that courage and that conviction to act with us. Now, Ernest Holmes said in the Science of Mind textbook that all illumination, inspiration, and realization must come through the self-knowing mind in order to manifest. I love that quote, and there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. When we're in the creative process, illumination, inspiration, and realization is what's going on with us, but it has to come through the self-knowing mind. So in order to truly and really have a grand rising, both in our own lives and in our community and out in the larger world, we must be more diligent than ever about doing our spiritual practices, because those are what will allow us to know ourselves. Specifically, the one spiritual practice that I believe will be more effective in creating a grand rising than any of the others is personal self-awareness. And this is a practice that's listed in the Spiritual Principles and Practices class that Centers for Spiritual Living offers. Personal self-awareness. This is the practice that I use more than all the others combined. Honestly, I use some of the others, but this one, I use it consistently, persistently, every single day, sometimes several times a day. I use treatment as well, and I use a lot of other things, but that one, that's where I begin and that's where I end. In the Spiritual Principles and Practices class, in order to get to personal self-awareness, it recommends spiritual coaching by a practitioner. Go figure. Along with sitting in the silence and paying attention without judgment to the feelings that arise when we do that. And therapy. I do this practice every single day, and I've developed my own way to do it. And if you don't have a way to if you don't have a personal self-awareness practice, I encourage you to create one for yourself. Learn what you're feeling. Learn to identify those feelings. When I tell people who don't know what they're feeling at any given moment, I say, go to Google, type in feelings list, and see what comes up, and then go from there and start learning to identify your feelings. My spiritual practice, my self-awareness practice, is a combo pack. It's kind of like, it's got a little bit of the 12-step inventory process, but it also has emphasis on my own stuff, not yours, not anyone else's, and identifying my feelings, And last but not least, forgiveness. And the forgiveness piece is because many times these days, I find myself angry. Not only am I tired, but I get angry easier these days. Sometimes it goes beyond anger and I feel rage because I felt betrayed by the human race. I am in a state of utter disbelief and dismay sometimes at the things I see and hear. So, yeah, forgiveness is real big on my list of things to do because I've decided with clarity, based on my spiritual practices, I've decided to go out into the world and do what I can to heal the world. I'm real big on social justice these days, but I can't be effective, and we can't be effective in our work no matter what it is, whether it's moving a spiritual community from one location to another, or something personal or our lives, or bigger. We can't be effective unless we are calm and at peace. And I can't be calm and at peace unless I forgive. And oh, by the way, forgiveness, mostly what I'm forgiving is myself for getting angry in the first place, because I tend to judge myself when I do that. Anger still frightens me a little bit. I've learned how to respond appropriately to that feeling, but the judgment is still there a little. And so I forgive myself. I forgive myself. So this grand rising thing can be used personally as well as in the larger world. And it begins with spiritual practice. There's another aspect to grand rising, and I know I've experienced this, and maybe you have as well. And I'm going to give you a quote, and this one isn't in the slides. Sorry. I just found it yesterday. It popped up in my life. I had to use it. This quote comes from Peter Kingsley in a book called Dark Places of Wisdom. If you're lucky, at some point in your life, you'll come to a complete dead end. Or to put it another way, if you're lucky, you'll come to a crossroads and see that the path to the left leads to hell, the path to the right leads to hell, the road straight ahead leads to hell. And if you try to turn around, you'll end up in complete and utter hell. Every way leads you to hell, and there's no way out, nothing left for you to do. Nothing can possibly satisfy you anymore. Then, if you're ready, you'll start to discover inside yourself what you always longed for, but were never able to find. Again, that's from Peter Kingsley in a book called The Dark Places of Wisdom. And I love that. This community is at the end of one way of being in the world. I hope it's ready to start to discover inside the hearts and souls of every single member of this community. I hope you guys are ready to discover what you've always longed for, but were never able to find. And I'm going to add a little thing there. Again, what you've always longed for, but never could figure out how to create. I'm knowing for you right here and right now that you are indeed, from this point forward, knowing how to create what you guys are longing for as a community. So maybe you are at the end of one way of living and faced with recreating yourself on almost every level. I've been there several times. Maybe something's happened and you've decided to stop doing something or start doing something as a result of that event. Maybe you've experienced the loss of a career, a job, a spouse, or a partner, or a lifestyle. It doesn't matter what the loss is. What matters is what you do with that loss. I know, and I hope you do as well, that in order to affect a grand rising in our lives, it isn't necessary to be at a dead end. But I also know that sometimes it seems like that, right? But in this thing called new thought, it isn't about asking ourselves, what was I thinking when I created that? No, we don't do that anymore. I'm sorry, that's not on our list of things to do anymore. It's about asking ourselves things like, what wants to be known here? What wants to rise within us to allow ourselves to live greater than ever? What grand rising can I create? Because I have news for you. When that kind of stuff happens, when that loss happens, we can either go into fear-based living, limiting ourselves by retreating into our homes and shutting ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit and isolating ourselves from others and licking our wounds and suffering in silence, never quite able to heal. I've done that before. I don't do it anymore. Eventually, when we do that, we might emerge, but what emerges is a different person, one who's afraid of living fully. We don't go to the places we used to go, and we don't do the things we used to do. Sometimes in our efforts to achieve some kind of order in our lives, we become controlling. But there's another option for us. There's another choice. When that kind of stuff happens, when those losses that happen are so deep and so profound, we can use the principles and the practices of this teaching and rise grander than ever. This, more than any other thing, is why I have gone in the direction I have in my ministry. It's why I have my focus ministry called Fearlessly Feral Living. And it's also why I do interim ministry work, because I meet up with individuals and communities who have experienced these kinds of losses, and they're a hot mess. They don't know what to do. They're unsure of themselves. They've had these losses. They don't know how to heal. They don't know where to go. They don't have clarity. And I get to go in and show them ways to get clarity. I get to go in and talk with them, and I get to to help them create where the opportunities and the pathways for them to go where they want to go. When people have experienced a loss, or when communities have experienced a loss, I don't really see the loss. We all experience loss. I mean, it's there, it's kind of important, but what I see is that these people in these communities are on the edge of a breakthrough into something greater than ever. And I love being able to provide them with ways to do so, because I really don't see communities acting out in fear. I really don't like that. It distresses me, because there's so much more and so much better. You know, this teaching called Science of Mind, I'm hearing rumbles around the people that I talk with. They're starting to call this teaching a liberation theology. And I love that. I know when I came here and started incorporating this teaching into my life, I became liberated. So yeah, it's not called a liberation theology for nothing. So here's a quote from Michael Singer that I want to share with you. He says, in The Untethered Soul, and by the way, I really recommend that you read this book, The Untethered Soul. I read it once thoroughly. I use it for research a lot. I go back and revisit it all the time. Here's the quote from Michael Singer. He says, the natural ups and downs of life can either generate personal growth or create personal fears. Which of these dominates is completely dependent on how we view change. So you guys, if you're one of those people who says, I don't like change, you might want to look at that language. You might want to look at that language. We are at choice as to how we respond to change, because change is always going to happen. Always. You know, there's a saying that I hear quite frequently, the only sure things in life are death and taxes. I disagree. I'm going to add change to that. Life is one constant, big, huge change, one change after the other. We get to learn how to deal with those changes successfully, so that we come out the other end greater and bigger and more and stronger and better than ever. We get to come out the other end of whatever changes there are, achieving and knowing a grand rising. So here's another quote. This one's from Martin Luther King. And his birthday is tomorrow. It's a holiday, and we celebrate this because some of the things he has said are and done in his life were beautiful. He said, the ultimate measure of a human is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. And that's where we're at right now, guys. Challenge and controversy. Every time you put the slide up, I have to switch from looking at my computer where I've got my talk posted to my laptop where I also have it pulled up, because when you put the slides up, it blocks my talk out and then I have to find my place again. So if I hesitate a little after every quote, that's why. Okay. We can use this teaching. We can use it to come out of these challenges and these controversies with the wisdom and the clarity and the power. We come out of them with clarity to know what is ours to do. We come out with wisdom to know what to do and how to be and how to show up in the world. And we come out with the power to act on all of that knowledge and wisdom. And all we have to do to get there is to use spiritual principles and practices consistently and persistently every single day. The temptation to want to move outward is so great during these times. And I'm constantly harping on, no, it's time to move inward. It's time to take a step back and move inward and examine yourself and really know what's going on here. Only then can we then begin to move outward. So I feel like I'm nagging, I feel like I'm preaching, I feel like I'm harping on these things, but I am so convinced that going within and using spiritual practices is the way to go that I don't stop. I just keep plunging on through. Like, no, we can't do the outer yet. We got to go within. So that gets us to the promise that liberation carries for us when we go within, when we do those spiritual practices consistently and persistently. This teaching is absolutely amazing and so powerful. I've recently been doing on my podcast the back to basics, from the introduction in the Science of Mind textbook, the thing itself, what it does, how it works, and how to use it. Those 4. Oh, I'm having so much fun with them. It's been so nice for me to reread each of those sections and sit for a while and go within and remember the basics of our teaching. And I finished the first 3 already, and they're up on my podcast, Fearlessly Feral Living. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it. They're up. The 3rd one I'm working on, and or the 4th one rather. And in the last section, that 4th section, Holmes complains. He says there's too much theory and too little practice. Yes, there's a time to go within, and then there's a time to move out and practice this stuff. We've got to be in balance with that. So if I had one message to give to you today, to leave you with, it would be to become more diligent than ever during these challenges, during this move in this community, during whatever changes are going on in your personal life. If I had one thing to give you as a takeaway, it would be become more diligent than ever about your spiritual practices in order to achieve a grand rising in your own life. Just begin there and do that. So I'm going to close with this one last quote, and let me move because when they put the slide up, I'm not going to be able to see it on the computer. To be extraordinary is to be connected to this spiritual aspect of yourself and to feel it move you to create, change, invent, and rattle the world. I love that, rattle the world. And that's by Vishen Lakhiani in a book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And so my treatment that I leave you with right here and right now is for connection to the spiritual aspect of ourselves, for the God within each and every one of us. and additional clarity and wisdom and knowingness and willingness to go within and then move forward and do what is ours to do. And so I pray, acknowledging that absolutely wonderful spirit, that divine presence, that universal presence, that force, that energy that is everywhere present, knowing that it moves and lives and breathes in and as and through me, that it uses me with delight and joy to carry its message out into this good world. And so I am true and well and thoroughly connected with spirit. I feel that connection 24/7. And from that connection, I speak my word right here and right now for continuation of feeling that connection, for the willingness to go within and do the inner work that is so necessary in allowing us to be effective, to do the outer work, and for additional willingness and joy and enthusiasm to move outward and do our work out in the world with clarity, with wisdom, with courage, with total and complete faith that all is indeed well, right here and right now. And I release these words into that law, ever so grateful for them, ever so grateful for that law that has already said yes to my words. And I anchor, and so it is. Thank you very much, everybody. Namaste and good morning.